Good day and welcome to Agenda. Sitting in for Cito Beltran. My name is Ed Lingao. We are One News, all sides, all the time. For today's daily starter, there's an old quote from Microsoft co-founder and philanthropist Bill Gates. And we quote, as we look ahead into the next century, leaders will be those who empower others. And now let's take a quick look at the front page of the Philippine Star. The Solicitor General says President Bongbong Marcos wants to stop dealing with the International Criminal Court. Soldier Menardo Guevara told the Philippine Star that, and we quote, as far as the state is concerned, our engagement in any form with the ICC has come to an end, with the rendition of judgment by the ICC Appeals Chamber. Guevara says he advised the president about a full disengagement, to which Bongbong Marcos or the president agreed. The government launches the Maharlika website. This, as a new law, faces criticisms from sectors which have been questioning the decision to create the country's first ever sovereign or development wealth fund. Outgoing Armed Forces of the Philippines Chief of Staff Andres Centino, who is the newly appointed presidential advisor on West Philippine Sea, says one of his goals as he takes office is to address the reported incursions and near collisions between Philippine and Chinese vessels. Beginning July 24, the Foreign Affairs Department says the turnaround time for the processing of passports in Metro Manila will be reduced from 12 to 10 working days for regular applications and from 7 to 5 working days for expedited applications. And as at 1 p.m. today, the Philippine women's national football team officially makes history as they make their debut in the FIFA Women's World Cup against Switzerland. And now moving on to today's agenda, one of the issues in the health sector is a shortage of nurses and healthcare workers. How should the president address this problem? We discuss that with our guest. But first, let's watch this video.
The Health Department raised concerns about the shortage of healthcare workers in our hospitals. The DOH reported that there are 4,500 nursing vacancies in government hospitals nationwide. But according to their data, about 124,000 licensed and registered Filipino nurses are jobless, underemployed, or doing non-related work. That's why a lot of them are seeking the greener pastures abroad. President Bongbong Marcos lamented the exodus of our nurses. As more countries demand the service of Filipino nurses, President Bongbong Marcos said we have become a victim of our own success. In response, Health Secretary Ted Herbosa pushed efforts to increase our manpower of nurses. For one, he seeks to establish an advisory council that will focus on solving nurses' concerns. He also plans to hire nursing graduates who failed the boards and scored slightly lower than a 75% passing grade. Aside from these, how can the Marcos administration address the concerns of nurses in the country? Let's discuss on today's agenda.
Melvin Miranda is the national president of the Philippine Nurses Association. He is also the incumbent board of governor of the association's Kamanava chapter. Aside from this, Miranda is the dean of Manila Central University College of Nursing.
And good morning, Mr. Miranda. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Sir Ed.
Yes, sir. Sir, of course, we are obviously on SONA mode today, only 3 days before the SONA. But before we go into that, let me start off with something a little bit more general. Let me draw back a bit. Quite a conundrum we appear to have right now. You have a shortage of sorts of people who want to work as nurses, yet you also have at the same time an oversupply of nurses. Parang ang dami natin nursing graduates, pero walang pumipick up ng trabaho. Saan nagmumula yung problema?
Yeah. Actually, the context of what we are seeing with our profession in the country is seemingly and basically applicable to those, for example, who are just recently graduated and earned the license. Because of the offer of the competitive salaries in the BPOs, with the entry level of our government, just like 33,600, and for a BPO, whose offer that the offers particularly almost doubled to 40 to 60,000. So basically, for those who invested in their education, that almost 500,000 plus, they want to pay back these investments to their parents. So that's merely the mindset of our graduates who just earned the license. So that's why they diverted to their application to most in the BPOs. So particularly those that have been mentioned by the Department of Health are those nurses who have not engaged themselves in the hospital and in the health centers.
Mm-hmm. Can you give us the numbers, at least the basic numbers, what we know so far? But like how many I don't know if you'd call it a shortage eh. How many ang backlog natin siguro doon sa nursing sector versus how many ang surplus, if that's the right word for it, natin ng nurses or nursing graduates?
Yes. Apo. Actually, as mentioned by the Department of Health with their data from the HRHDB is that we have the 124,000. However, with that, but seemingly kasi the shortage is happening in the provinces, not in the national capital region, because most of the nurses who are processing their application geared towards in the DOH referred hospitals and premier hospitals in the national capital region. So seemingly the reflection of those shortages and understaffing are in the private and in the public hospitals in provinces.
Mm. So yung 124, that's is shortage the right word for it? What's a good word to use for that? Kasi parang hindi shortage kung marami.
Yes, yes, exactly. It's more on the understaffing, specifically because understaffing because the private sector, specifically the private hospital association of the Philippines, they are very vocal when it comes to the understaffing because most of their nurses in the private sector shifted their work to the public sector or the public healthcare hospitals because of the salary that offered in the entry level.
Mm-hmm. So you 124 versus how many graduates do we generate every year?
For the graduates every year is particularly if we will try to consider those who have passed. We are producing almost 28,000 nurses every year. Because those who are graduated for every year are those who have applied and passed the nurse licensure examination.
Mm-hmm. Pero sir, it does make you wonder. I suppose klaro naman sa mga estudyante while they're still in school kung magkano yung pay levels. Hindi naman hindi naman bago yung mga pay levels eh. It's not like the pay levels just arose just before graduation time, di ba? So if it was clear to everybody what the pay levels were, whether it's a public or private hospital or healthcare facility, why do people still take nursing then? Of course, maliban doon sa aside from many altruistic reasons that they may have, why still take nursing and then go to BPO?
Yeah. Actually, even the pre-pandemic, this has been a global trend because it was already projected 10 years ago that most of the first world countries will really need human resources for health. And even by 2020, 2021, they have reiterated, those countries such as the US, the UK, and other countries have reiterated the projection until 2020 that they will really need almost 500,000 because particularly number one of the increasing number of their aging population, and second those of their locals who are not engaged in these programs and particularly will produce healthcare workers such as nurses. Third is particularly of the retirees, the increasing number of retirees in these countries.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Mr. Melvin, I'll zoom in na to what government has been able to do, or is doing, or is planning to do with regard to the backlog, the shortage ng nurses sa health sector. 1 year since the president became president, how are we? Where are we as far as fixing that problem is concerned?
Actually, when I remembered 1 year ago when he was our keynote speaker in the 100 years celebration of the Philippine Nurses Association. He actually mentioned about the plight of our nurses, particularly in the salaries and compensation. But seemingly, when it comes to the movement of the action of the government, it seems that very slow yung the action is as expected, because we are aiming for the enactment of the comprehensive nursing bill in the House of Representatives and the Senate, but it's slowly moving, and it almost ended up the 19th Congress that it did not pass into, even in the Senate, into the public hearing, and for the House of Representatives it did not considered basically as a priority bill to be enacted into law.
Pero Mr. Miranda, how exactly do we solve, or how exactly does one solve a problem of nursing salaries? I mean, I think it was clear naman from the discussion earlier na the bigger part of the problem is in the private sector compensation. Di ba? Did I get it right?
Yes.
It's not so much the public sector compensation, but it is more of the private sector compensation. In which case, what do you do with that? Do you set a ceiling, or hindi ceiling? Do you set a minimum for private sector nurses?
Actually, as part of the unified proposal for the amendment, and even with the UP Law Center, it has been proposed that at least we could have 50,000 salary of pesos, salary of our nurses. However, with the compensation and salaries that we have now, because of the disparity between the private and the government sector, we're looking forward to the perspective of the category of our healthcare workers, specifically the nurses, to professional, because we are categorized accordingly to non-agricultural. And if it is
non-agricultural.
Yes, non-agricultural. That's why any institution in the provinces will set the salary scheme on a minimum salary wage. Kaya that's why most of the private sector have set this as a way on. They are not violating any concerns pertaining to the salary of nurses, because we are categorized as non-agricultural. So hoping moving forward that we could be categorized as professionals.
Ano yun, sir? Para kayong pabrika?
Yes. Kaya that's why, if you will notice, why those nurses in the provinces, even premier hospitals in the provinces, are going to the national capital region, because in the national capital region, premier hospitals are almost competitive with their salaries, packages that is close to the public sector. So because of the situation of our profession is really on the non-agricultural sector or category.
Okay, sir. Nabagitin nyo kasi, I mean, at least the aim is for 50,000 for the private sector. Parang basic, no? Is that a term that you'd use for that?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Pero sir, ano ba ngayon? Pag ikaw nasa category ng non-agricultural, anong level yun?
Ayun, sir. Kasi since
sorry, natatawa ako.
Law,
It's no laughing matter, pero non-agricultural.
Yeah. Because the salary grade 15 only applies for the public sector. So the private sector is the one that is definitely affected. The nurses who are affected for that non-agricultural perspective. So that's why the leveling or the salary for the private sector is not the same as for the government, which the scale is the salary grade 15. So that's the problem. That's really one of the problems that we're facing now.
Yes, sir. Pero what I'm trying to ask is, pag non-agricultural yung category mo, anong level yan? Anong more or less, anong patak niyan? Kung 50,000 yung target, pag non-agri ka, saan naglalaro yan? O sinong karango mo?
Ayan, sir. Kasi kung pwedeng karango niyan, yung mga talagang mga nasa maintenance, nasa line of work talaga na pwedeng bigyan ng minimum salary wage, sir.
Minimum wage?
Minimum wage, yes.
So 500 something plus 40 pesos?
Yes, 570, yes, exactly. 570 per day.
Mr. Miranda, baka naman dahil maintenance na babanggit ninyo, iniisip na pagbibigyan ng maintenance medicine, maintenance na rin.
Hindi naman po.
Okay, so I suppose this would require, tama ba? This would require legislation o hindi naman? Kasi at this point, di ba? At this point, what you have is at least dun sa leveling, you have regional wage boards that set minimum wage wages for several sectors. In this particular case of nurses, would this require legislation to set or to peg yung minimum wage ng nurses, or at least to put in a mechanism for the appropriate setting of wages for nurses?
Yeah. Probably we could have a short term and a long term. For the long term, it will really need a legislation because even the Department of Budget and Management last December 2022 even mentioned that the implementation of our salary grade 15 is only implemented only for the nurse 1. So that's why, sir, the Department of Budget and Management did not adjusted the salaries of nurse 3, 4, up to 7 because they don't have legal basis. So that came into a realization that, okay, we need to really have a legislation. But for the short term, siguro with the regional wage organizations or agencies, we could wage board, we could probably discuss this matter because seemingly it will not progress the intention to really uplift and consider the salaries of our nurses because we nurses have been categorized as professionals.
Sir, yung did I get it right ba na the nurses as non-agricultural workers category, they're under the regional wage boards, at least yung setting ng kanilang
Yes, yes.
Okay. So minimum wage talaga.
Yes, minimum wage. Yes, minimum wage talaga.
Tapos sir, kasi we made a distinction between of course public sector and private sector nurses. Could you again I'd be asking you to give a ballpark o kahit in general terms, ano yung comparatives natin between private and public sector nurse?
In terms of salary, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, in terms of salary, it's with the Department of Labor and Employment na rin as we coordinated with them. They have inspected some of the private hospitals and provinces. And they even mentioned we have 9,000 to almost 15,000 as versus the entry level of 33,600 for the private sector as entry level. So almost half yung disparity. Yes, half yung disparity. So I think we really need to discuss this matter. And even this has been our battle cry to prioritize. But seemingly in the past weeks that we have, wherein we actually appreciated the efforts of the Department of Health that is considered as one of the key point agenda of the DOH Secretary Herbosa. But I think we really need to talk this in a joint dialogue so that it will have a concrete solution.
Sir, at 15,000, bakit pa nag-nursing yung mga tao? I mean, what I hear, of course, of people who take up nursing, di ba? Parang ka na nagdo-doktor nasa morgue ka, nag-ano ka ng mga bangkay, it is a medical field.
Yes.
So why do people still bother to take up nursing considering the pay scale that they're facing? I suppose in part maybe because it's also pre-med, di ba?
Yes.
Pero ang dami pa rin nag-nursing anyway, hindi naman nagiging doktor. So what's the motivation?
Yeah. Still the motivation is a global trend of the need. Pero again,
going abroad.
Most of our in the previous years kasi sir marami na tayong we have many nurses are really deployed abroad and most of their relatives are pushing their relatives here in the Philippines to enroll in the BSN program simply because they will be the ones who will replace them in their in their workplaces abroad. So that's the motivation. Kaya that's why when we surveyed me as immersed in the academy, most of our students have enrolled in nursing because most of their relatives are employed abroad and they are sponsoring their education. And these are somehow a result of a survey by which considering security. Because here in the country, sir, the problem is that we have a concern also with the security of tenure. Just like, for example, we all know for a fact that still contractualization is still existing with job orders and contract of services. So I just diverted this, sir, to the job security because it's connected with the salaries and compensation. Because for now, sir, we have the salary grade 15, but there is some, because of the devolution, the local government units, most of our nurses is on salary grade 11, and on their employment status is are rather secure job orders and contract of service.
Contractuals.
And even our nurse deployment program, sir, of the DOH, who are deployed in the far-flung areas and geographically isolated disadvantaged areas, they are renewable every year. So they don't have the assurance to have the continuity of their jobs. So I think these are things that made the hesitancies and reluctancies for our nurses to stay in the country.
You make a strong point there na ano na the bigger problem with regard to supply nasa far-flung areas, nasa mga probinsya versus Metro Manila and I suppose the urban centers. Could you give us an idea? Sinong pinaka worst affected? I mean, talagang yung mga far-flung areas talaga or pati lang kahit yun lang sa Calabarzon may problema na rin?
Yes, actually, as based from the report of the Department of Health, ang affected talaga dito ay, hindi natin, you can imagine, it's Mimaropa, the Region 4, and the others are in Mindanao, particularly, dahil most of the geographical areas that had not been reached by our health services, and most of the health services are being served by our nurses. So that's why with the all cadres of the allied health professions, doctors, midwives, nurses, 73% ang nurses because we need to deploy them to reach these communities.
Okay, several matters on the table. For example, QC Congressman Melvin Miranda pushing for the passage of HB 5276. I'm sure you've heard of this. To increase entry-level monthly pay of government nurses, this government to 64,000. But I suppose that sounds like a better figure, but that's for government nurses, which is not the problem of the bigger problem of private nursing.
Actually, we are supporting anything that will definitely increase the salaries of nurses because even in the Southeast Asian regions, we are with the average of 40,000 here in the Philippines. We are the second to the lowest of the countries that offering these salaries. So if there is an intention to increase this to 64,000, then we are definitely in support of it. But basically, again, the private sector are the ones that really concerned about the salaries, and seemingly these are the situations of the private hospitals that they close wards and areas because they really lack manpower.
So Melvin, my last question na lang. We're running out of time Pero in the end, after all the promises made at the start of the year, the President's year, anong grade na bibigay mo sa ating gobyerno, ating Pangulo?
For the nursing sector, sir, on our end, we could consider, sir, a 7.
Out of 10, out of 100, ano yan?
Out of 10. Out of 10.
Nanigurado lang ako. Mamaya,
yes.
baseline natin
Out of 10 because, again, as what we have mentioned, over the past couple of weeks, we have heard mechanisms that show clear pathway for graduate nurses, yet as the case of those who are licensed, I think there are some concerns that the government remains silent about it. If I may continue, we urge the government to propose adequate and sustainable the pull factors to entice and engage our new registered nurses to fill the vacancies at hand. These are the following as we talk about the expectations. Number one is inclusive implementation of the salary grade 15 for nurses. Second is the end of contractualization by opening the more plantilla positions. Third is provisions of comprehensive health and non-health benefits. And fourth, a just and humane working environment. But ultimately, the government should hear the nurses' plea for the immediate passing and enactment of the comprehensive nursing bill. Because in the past week, sir, the options and alternatives of our government, even by CHED and just recently by the DOH, is focused on the offering of the healthcare assistant, nursing assistants, clinical care associates, underboard. It diverted already to this augmenting the shortage of nurses, but not anymore uplifting the professions of nurses in the country.
Okay. Well, I'd like to say thank you kay Ginoong Melvin Miranda, Philippine Nurses Association President, for joining us this morning. Sir, ingat po parati at well, good luck sa sa ating sinusulong. Thank you, sir.
Maraming salamat po.
And agenda will return. Keep it here in One News, all sides, all the time.
Significant changes in the basic education curriculum may be implemented starting in 2025. That's according to the Education Department, who said they are now finalizing the revised K-10 curriculum that was recently published for public feedback. Along with this, DepEd has also finalized its plan to make blended learning a permanent mode of instruction to help address the shortage of classrooms and teachers in public schools. The agency is set to implement a two-track approach to address inadequate personnel and facilities in schools in a short span of time. But for those seeking for a calendar change, DepEd said it may take 3 to 5 years before public elementary and high schools can revert to the old school calendar of June to March. As for teachers, the department said it was studying calls for a wage hike. The agency noted that they cannot just unilaterally change or increase salaries, as teachers are covered by the Salary Standardization Law. Let's discuss all of these on today's agenda.
Vladimir Quetua currently serves as the national chairperson of Alliance of Concerned Teachers, or ACT Philippines. He is also a public high school teacher.
And welcome back to Agenda this time. We are joined by Vladimir Quetua, National Chairperson of the ACT, or ACT Philippines, to discuss the education sector's SONA wishlist. Magandang umaga, sir, and thank you for joining us. Ay, sir, nakamute ata tayo.
Yan, malinaw po?
Mali na, sir.
Yan, magandang umaga po at sa ating milyong-milyong tagapaganood at tagapakinig.
Yes, sir. Well, mukhang perpetually problematic naman ang ating sektor. Kung hindi resources, sweldo, o ngayon pati curriculum. at bagamat katatapos lamang ng kalalabasan natin from the pandemic problem at bumalik tayo sa pasukan, ano pa rin tayo? We're still puttering along, and now we're looking at the possibility of revising the curriculum to K-10.
Plus 2.
Well, plus 2. Yan nga eh. Some misunderstandings there, but that's pretty clear. Still K-12, pero nag-revise ng K-10. Pero sir, with that in mind, I know it came from a big problem nung pandemic sa education sector. Have we recovered? Very general question there, I know. It's a very general question, but I'd like to start off with the basics. Have we recovered from the pandemic, and have we recovered as much as we should have from the pandemic?
Absolutely, yes, Bok. Maganda yung tanong, no? Absolutely not, no? Sa katunayan, kung bakit magkakaroon ng National Learning Cup, no? Ito yung paghahabol ng Department of Education doon sa... Actually, Bok, bago pa magpandemya, matindi na yung learning crisis natin, no? Dinagdagan pa ito noong 2 taong sarado ang mga paaralan, tapos wala namang ibinigay na suporta o tinatawag nga nating game-changing measure yung nagdaang Pangulo at yung kasalukuyang Pangulo upang tugunan yung 2 taon na nasa online, no? Kaya yun sana yung inaasahan namin pagbukas ng klase last August at November, kasi yung August limited face-to-face, no November ay face-to-face na. Yan sana yung gusto naming marinig, no? Pero it's too late, no? Matindi na yung crisis, no? At sa katunayan, may pag-amin naman dito si Secretary Duterte doon sa kanyang matatag education agenda program, no? It is not the teachers but rather the system. But the problem was, ano ang ginagawa ng kasalukuyang gobyerno para baguhin yung sistema sa pinedukasyon para magkaroon ng tinatawag na learning recovery.
But these are problems that we face every year. So moving forward, I know the complaints are the same, the problems, the issues are the same, but we never seem to get to the point where we can sufficiently say na we're on the right track.
Totoo yan, Bok, totoo yan. Alam mo kung bakit? Kasi unang-una, hindi nila nakikita yung pinanggagalingan ng problem. Tama yan, taon-taon, hindi nga lang problem, that's the same but the worst problem comes nearer and nearer. Ibig sabihin talagang lumalala yung crisis. Imagine, sa usapin na lamang ng kakulangan, imagine, ang kaya lang ipagawa ng government, aminado sila rito, 5,000 lamang, na classroom, 5,000 lamang ang kaya nilang nyo i-hire. Pero they claim na 6 digits ang kulang na teachers, 6 digits ang kulang na classroom. Ibig sabihin, may problem talaga dun sa sistema, at ang problem na pinanggagalingan ay yung misprioritization sa usapin na education budget.
Teka, usapin na education budget. Iba bang issue yan? Medyo malawak na issue yan. Okay.
Yes,
Sige,
yes, yes.
sige, let's head there. Education budget. Every year, among the departments, at least among the departments, the education sector gets the largest. Among
Yes.
the departments, I'm not
Yes,
saying
yes.
among the allocations, kasi among the allocations, ibang usapan yun. Ibang
Correct,
usapan yun.
correct. Yes.
Percentage-wise of the budget or of GDP, how much are we allocating to education and how much should we be allocating?
Well, unfortunately, 3.5 lamang, no? Malayong-malayo pa tayo. Even the United Nations stated that kailangan at least 6% of our gross domestic product, BOC. So imagine, kung 3.5 lamang yan, ano yan, napakaliit lang yan, no? Hindi niya kayang punuan yung mga kakulangan na sinasabi natin. At sa katunayan, no, ito yung isang nakakatawa, no? Pag may kulang na mga teachers, may kulang na classroom, ang laging rekurso, ang laging sagot na lamang ng government ngayon, ang blended learning, no? Nakakapagtaka dahil napatunayan naman na blended learning talagang walang maitutulong ito, no? So yun yung pinanggagalingan, napakababa talaga ng budget sa education, 3.5 only.
I don't know where to start kasi kung yung mga PISA test natin, all the findings,
Yes.
and all that, every year that the test results come out, we grind our teeth and we say mea culpa, and then we wait for next test results to come out, and ganun pa rin. I mean, this is not the first test that we've seen na napakababa natin.
Correct. Yung 2 consecutive PISA, 2 consecutive teams, even the World Bank data, even yung latest IQ ng anong klaseng review nakita ko na binanggit ng isang manunulat, no? Lahat yun bagsak, no? Imagine dati 48 out of 49 in PISA, 49 na tayo, bottom last tayo sa international na pagsusulit. Talagang palala ng palala ito, Ed.
Okay, well, sir, ito, K-12. K-12, it was supposed to improve things, at least in the way that people plan or project where they're headed after graduation, di ba? The idea between K-12 was sana pagkatapos ng 12 years magmula kinder, rekta ka na, dire-diretso na sa trabaho at gaganda na ang buhay mo. Which is an improvement from nung panahon natin, I suppose. I suppose hindi tayo magkakaling henerasyon. Ako kasi hanggang grade 6 na ako eh. Before high school
NCE, noong time ko, NCE after grade 10.
NCE. NCE. But with additional 2 years, what have you observed?
Well, kung titingnan natin yung explanatory note ng isang mamabatas regarding sa kanyang ini-introduce na K10 plus 2, no? Talagang aminado sila na hindi naman nagpuntahan doon sa trabaho yung graduate natin ng K-12. Aminado sila na marami pa ring nagnanais na pumunta sa kolehiyo, no? Yun yung isang bahagi ng explanatory note. Kaya ngayon open na nila ngayon sa K10 plus 2 na yung 10 yung plus 2 ay hindi na mandatory unlike today, no? Yung status quo. Yung 2 years ay kukuha na lamang para dun sa mga tinatawag na professional degree, no? The problem is still pa rin ganun kahit na baguhin natin ang curriculum, ay talagang namang walang maibibigay na trabaho ang ating gobyerno, no? In fact, kung magtutuloy-tuloy naman sa kolehiyo, sa totoo lang hindi naman lahat ay nakakatapos ng tinatawag natin ng degree courses dahil nga dun sa gastusin, etc., no? So yun yung dahilan kung bakit talaga nababago yung K-10.
Now, actually, the other problem there is even if you finish a college degree, minsan parang napaka-generic ng college degree na wala ka rin pupuntahan at naghanap ka ng trabaho.
Yes, totoo yan. In fact, sa amin, sa sektor ng edukasyon, ay pumunta ka sa isang police station, pumunta ka sa isang mall, marami diyang teacher, no? Dahil nga doon sa kababaan ng plantilang ibinibigay o hiring, no? Imagine, ang kulang na teacher ay napakarami, pero ang hina-hire ng DepEd ay ganito. Ganyan din ibang mga courses, Bok, no? Sa katunayan, sa isang eskwelahan sa Camotes Island sa Cebu, kalahati ng teacher doon sa isang eskwelahan doon ay nasa abroad na, no? Ang ating mga engineer ay talagang nasa iba't ibang mga profesyon, nasa mga BPOs na sila ngayon dahil nga walang maibigay na trabaho, dagdag pa yung kababaan ng sweldo.
Pero sir, well, in fairness naman, like we said nga kanina, this is not a problem specific, I suppose, to this administration. It's been a perpetual problem that has never really been resolved as much as we would want. So moving forward, what's the solution? I mean, of course, maliban sa iakyat yung budget. kasi kasi kung mapunta tayo sa usaping yun, I think everybody knows that.
Tama naman, ano, pero minado naman talaga ako na talagang dudulo pa rin sa budget, no. Alam mo, kung may political will ng gobyerno, kasi ang masakit, no, Bok, no, at sa ating mga kababayan, lalo na yung mga teacher na nasa paaralan pa rin ngayon at extended pa rin ng trabaho, talaga may pangangailangan talaga na yung government ay magkaroon ng, alam mo, yung policy na talagang tutugon noon sa problema sa usapin ng sektor na edukasyon, no? Imagine, no, tayo yung pinakahuling nagbukas ng paaralan, pero sa pagbubukas nito, Bok, hindi naman natin pinaghandaan. Alam mo, parang alam mo yung haunted house, no? Malamang nakapunta ka sa mga carnival, no? Pag may haunted house, yung gusto mong pumasok, pero pagpasok mo matatakot ka. Imagine, nung Abril at Mayo o hanggang Junyo, no, Hunyo, itong taon lang ito, mga paaralan ay bukas, no? Sobrang init. Wala tayong narinig, Bok, na anong gagawin sa isang mainit na paaralan, nose bleeding ang mga estudyante, mga teacher nagkakasakit dahil matatanda na, no? Yan yung mga pwedeng minimum na pwedeng gawin kahit walang usapin walang usapin ng pagkakaperahan. Pero again, Bok, wala tayong narinig. Ang narinig natin, mga harlika, no? Ang narinig natin, in fact, binito, no, Bok, yung aming naipanalo naming ganansya sa usapin ng pagbabantay ng election last year, no? Yung tax exemption, no? Nangangamba kami maulit-ulito ngayon sa barangay elections.
Sir, let me zoom in particular dun sa sweldo ng mga guro. I mean, in the end, we can talk as much as we want about education, but in the end, it boils down, of course, to the people who man the classrooms, the people who are the face of education, the people who teach. Now, we've heard time and again the problem na ang malaking problema, among other things, is ang pay scale ng teachers, especially doon sa private sector. If I remember correctly, di ba? Di hamak mas mababa yung pay scale sa private sector ng mga teachers versus public sector. Iba pa siyempre, yung in general, yung pay scale ng lahat ng guro.
Well, totoo yan, Bok. Oh yes, totoo yan, Bok. Although, mali naman pagkumprehin na kasi ito yung laging argument ng government, no? Na kaya naglilipatan yung, bakit hindi tinataas ang government yung sahod sa public dahil baka maglipatan yung mga galing sa private, no? Well, totoo namang may mga maliliit na private school na mababa ang sweldo. Pero hindi nun dahilan kung bakit mababa ang sweldo, kundi dahil hindi binibigay ng mga private entities yung nararapat na batas, yung 70-20-10, yung dapat yung tuition ay napupunta sa kanila, no? So ngayon, balik tayo sa topic, no? Napakababa pa rin ang sweldo ng mga pampublikong guro sa buong Pilipinas. At sa katunayan ay alaman kami ng mga tinatawag na loan dito, loan doon, no? At tuloy-tuloy yan, lalo na pag ganitong opening uli ng mga tuition fee na mabayaran ng aming mga anak.
I'm sorry, but can you give us again an idea of how much yung pay scale? Private, public, versus, I don't know, what's a good comparison? Ano yung ka-level natin na pay scale?
Well, as well, kasi kung papagbabasahin kasi ang sweldo ng teacher, no, ang teacher 1 kasi ngayon sumasahod ng 27,000 only, no. Sa ilang mga maliliit na eskwelahan, no, halos ka-level naman yan, no. Pero mas marami pa rin lalo na sa private, sa mga tertiary level na mas mataas naman ng sahod dito, no. Dapat, no, kaso hindi talaga ito naibibigay, no. Pero still, mababa pa rin parehas ang sahod ng dalawang sektor na ito. Ibig sabihin ng private at saka ng mga pampubliko, no. Parehas kaming hindi nakakapasok sa tinasabi ng NEDA na ng living o yung tinatawag na family living wage na 42,000 ayon sa pinaka-latest.
Yung 27,000, ano yung katumbas niyan?
Teacher 1.
Yes, sir. Pero yung sabihin, ano yung katumbas niya na sweldo sa gobyerno? Sino yung kaano niya? Kasabayan niya?
Ang ka-level niya, mga professional, halimbawa, mga librarian, yan yung kasi yung pinaka-entry level ng mga teacher, kung sa yan, yung may mga kawani kasi ng SG1 hanggang salary grade 1 hanggang 10 mga driver 1. So sa gobyerno, sa mga LGU, ang ka-level namin ay yung mga hindi naman mga clerical pero mas mataas sa clerical. Pang SG11 yan.
I don't know if it's a fair comparison pero di ba nag-increase yung mga sweldo ng ibang sektor sa security sector. For example, the police and the military in the last administration. I know some people are of course saying na that may not exactly be a fair comparison because magkaiba ang trabaho. Pero I understand also that the push even then was sabayan naman lang sabay man lang ng mga frontliners sa education sector yung sweldo nila. How did
Well,
that...
Yes, totoo yan, Bok. Tama yan, no? Kasi tama yan, no? Kami rin ay frontliners, no? Kami rin ay merong may pinangangalagaan din kaming yaman kasi yun ang sinasabi nila, comparison, no? Na ang pulis ay buwis buhay. Kami rin ay buwis buhay dahil ang aming mga paaral, alam naman natin na hindi rin safe, no? Dahil nga doon sa iba't ibang mga possible na natural at mga man-made na problema, no? Kami rin ay napakarami rin naming binabantayan, ano? So sabihin, kami mga professional ayon sa Magna Carta ay dapat ay katuwang o kasama ng sweldo, no? Totoo 'yan, Bok, no? Ang mga nurses natin ay mataas na ang sweldo, no? Ang ating mga pulis at kapulisan, mga sundalo ay mataas ang sweldo. Kami na lamang yung left behind, no? Yun ay nakakalungkot dahil sabi nga ng iba, no, kung sa Germany ka pupunta bago itaas ang sweldo ng ibang profesyon, sabihin ng chancellor, tataasan muna namin ang sweldo ng mga teacher. Kasi sino ba nag-produce sa mga ito, no? Sa mga attorney at saka sa mga babatas, kundi ang mga teacher, no? Ang problema, we are under-supported, neglected, pero favorite red tag.
Sir Vlad, let me end with this na lang po. Kung kayo magbibigay ng grade sa ating administrasyon for the last school year, if you might put it that way, ano yung grade ibibigay ninyo?
Well, actually, minarkahan na namin, no, si President BBM, si Sara, no. May tinatawag tayong pasado, may tinatawag tayong bagsak, no. Dahil 1 taon at dahil hindi nagawa yung 10 naming kahilingan, from 1 to 10 minamarkahan namin siya ng 4. Meaning sa graduhan ay hinid sa remediation, no. Kailangan niya pang sipagan para makamit yung mga kahilingan ng sektor ng edukasyon, especially ng guro, lalo sa pagtataas ng sahod ng 50,000 a month yung kanyang entry level. Yun lamang, maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat po, Mr. Vladimir Quetua, National Chairperson ng ACT or ACT Philippines, ang Alliance of Concerned Teachers. Sir, good morning po.
Thank you po. Salamat.
Agenda will return. Keep it here in One News, all sides, all the time.
The Philippine economy is still expected to post the fastest growth in Southeast Asia this year and the next. That's according to the Asian Development Bank or ADB. The ADB is keeping its 6% gross domestic product growth projection for the Philippines in 2023, unchanged from their previous April report. ADB noted that the robust investment and private consumption fueled rosy growth in the first quarter. Aside from the resilient consumer spending, tourism and the business process outsourcing sectors are continued to be seen as drivers for the growth of the economy. But the question remains, are all these growth actually felt by Filipinos? Especially when the Philippine Statistics Authority reported that the nation missed its 2022 core development indicators on poverty reduction and food inflation. Let's talk about that on today's agenda.
Ronilo Balbieran is the Vice President of the Research, Education, and Institutional Development, also known as the READ Foundation. Given his expertise, Balbieran also teaches economics at the University of Asia and the Pacific.
And good morning, talk about the economy for today, 3 days before the President's State of the Nation address. And with us, of course, is Professor Ronilo Balbieran. Sir, magandang umaga. And thank you for joining us.
Magandang
Yes,
umaga.
sir. Yes, sir. Sir, actually, if I break it down further, kasi there was a question asked dun sa voiceover just before we came in. Is growth being felt by Filipinos? Of course, that's a very important question. But let me also throw in another question that we'd also want to go into. So number one is the growth being felt by Filipinos? 6% daw, hopefully by the year end. Pero also, did we grow as much as we could have, considering that we came from a pandemic? And, coming from a pandemic, there should be no other way but up.
Yeah.
Diba? So yes, the numbers may look may look good or very good compared to the previous year, but that may also be throwing us off kasi could we have done better as well? So those two questions, sir. I don't know which one you want to start with.
Well, kasi dalawang bagay yan kaya
Yes,
mahirap pag-usapan pag pinaghalo mo ang lago ng ekonomiya at saka yung pag nararamdaman mo ba yung lago ng ekonomiya.
That's true, sir.
Sa English, economic growth at economic development yung mahirap pagsamahin ng sabay yon. So, ang una sa economic growth, no, ang pinag-uusapan lang doon, GDP, inflation, tsaka unemployment. Tatlong bagay lang yon. No, so yung nakita naman natin 2022, no, walang naka-forecast na mag-grow tayo ng 7.6. Walang banyago o walang Pilipino naka-forecast ng 7.6. No? Ang pinakamataas na 7.5 for 2022. So, yun yung talagang inevitable, mag-grow tayo dahil pinalabas tayo ng bahay.
Yeah.
No?
Yes,
So, pero pangalawa, nanggagaling din kasi tayo na wow, talagang napakadami talagang naniniwala na bumoto kay President Marcos, so high spirit tayo. So kaya talagang nagsabay yung high spirit natin coming from election tsaka yung pinalabas tayo ng bahay. Pero tingnan mo, nangyari yung 7.6 na yun sa gitna ng nangyayaring gulo yung Russia-Ukraine war, no? So sa gitna nung nagtataasan ng presyo ng bilihin, no? Marami doon wala tayong kasalanan, hindi natin yun, etc. So pero lumago pa rin tayo ng 7.6. Pero nagising tayo ng first quarter, ng second quarter ngayong taon na sandali lang kumagat pala sa wallet ko yung mga presyo ng bilihin na yun. So nawala yung excitement nung 2022. Ngayon naramdaman natin yun. Kaya nag-slow down tayo. Pero sa forecast kasi ng maraming mga institusyon, ADB yung pinakita nyo kanina, no, na sa gitna ng lahat ng pagkagat nitong inflation na to, dahil ngayon mag-slow down naman yung world economy, yun ang sabi nila IMF, World Bank, ADB, no, baka lumagpak ang ekonomiya ng mundo, pero sabi nila sa Pilipinas hindi mangyayari yon. So mag-slow down lang ng kaunti dahil nga kumagat doon sa wallet ng mga Pilipino yung inflation na yun na umapaw hanggang second quarter, no. So naglumago ba tayo in as much as we could? Well, hindi natin ma-separate kasi yung pero makikita mo yung datos na sa gitna ng slowdown ng world economy, ang sabi ng lahat ng mga banyaga, mag-grow pa rin ang Pilipinas. So sa akin, sa tingin ko, sa gitna ng lahat ng problema na marami doon ay wala tayong kinalaman, lumago pa rin tayo ng mabilis. Number 2, nagda-dive na po ngayon ng inflation. Ngayon po ay nagda-dive na po yung unemployment rate. So marami na po nagkaroon ng dagdag na trabaho. So yung poverty kasi sa 2024 pa lalabas yung susunod na datos kaya hindi pa natin malaman kung talagang naramdaman ba natin yun in relation doon sa pagbaba ng poverty rate. So ganun po yung aking So suma total, in terms of economic growth, paglago ng ekonomiya, nag-grow po tayo despite, no, sa kabila ng kumbaga sa usapang kato, partida pa yan na nag-inflation, pero nag-grow pa tayo at we are being forecasted to grow the fastest in Southeast Asia.
And that's despite some of these or many of these elements being beyond our control, I suppose, when you refer to the Ukraine-Russia war and the increases in oil prices.
Opo, kasi di natin akalain sa layo ng Ukraine, yung pala doon pala tayo bumibili ng mga fertilizer, doon pala tayo bumibili ng feeds para sa mga manok natin. So kaya nagmahal ng manok, dahil nagmahal yung manok, nagmahal na rin yung itlog, nagmahal na rin. So sunod-sunod po yung mga problema natin dahil doon sa nangyaring away na wala naman tayong kinalaman.
Yeah, that's a very fair assessment, sir. But on the other hand, there are also people who are also pointing out that the at least one sector of the economy, the agriculture sector, could have been handled a lot better in the last year. For example, well, we still have problems with the price of sugar. We still have problems. We still have problems with the price of rice. And at a certain point last year, implement tayo sa sibuyas. I know it's not naman a vital commodity yung sibuyas, di ba? Masarap lang siya. Pero all these things pointed to they seem to have pointed to an apparent problem with the decision making on time. Yung for example, something as simple as, is it time to import or not yet? Nag-import pero inabot na ng harvest. May mga ganun pong ilang mga sabit na ganun.
Oo, kailangan talaga solusyonan natin yun kasi hindi naman tayo magiging self-sufficient sa agrikultura. No, sa dami natin, tapos hindi naman tayo kasing ng Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, no, meron silang Great Mekong River na magkakadikit yung lahat ng lupa doon. Tayo bitak-bitak yung lupa natin, so 7,600 islands, no, hindi tayo magkakaroon ng ganung economy. So, kailangan mag-import tayo pero dapat timingin natin yun kasi pagka mali yung timing na yun, talagang parang marami tayong papatayin ng mga magsasaka, no, kasi at that time na mag-aani sila tapos magbebenta sila tapos tsaka ka nag-import, talagang kawawa naman sila, no. Kung kailangan natin sila tapos hindi tayo makapagbayad ng maayos, no. Pero pagka wala na tayong kinakain, pupunta tayo lahat sa kanila. So importante yung decision na yon, no. So yung part na yon, agree po ako, no, na mas magandang dapat mas maayos yung decision making, may proseso, may criteria, so para hindi po na agrabyado ang ating mga magsasaka, no.
Yes, sir. Sir, the other thing, sir, I want to ask about is I don't want to oversimplify, of course, but I'm trying to find a better way of asking this. Many times there seems to be I don't know if dichotomy is the right word to use for it. Parang in choosing between who to benefit or support more, the consumer who has to pay the final price or the producer, in this case the magsasaka, and his farm gate price. Minsan parang ano ba talaga, who do you give preferential treatment to? Yung taong kumakayod sa ilalim ng araw o yung taong kumakayod para may maihatag sa lamesa?
Dalawang bagay po yun. Yung una, doon sa yung sinong pipiliin natin, ganyan po ang pinag-aaralan ng buong study ng economics, no. Kung sino ang pumili ay siya ang nasaktan, no? Napakahirap pong pumili. Lagi siyang nasasaktan kasi laging pinagpipili mo, hindi ka naman namimili ng between good and evil. Minsan namimili ka between two good, no? Para pag pumili ka doon sa isang good, may mo to. So mahirap po 'yon. Pero ang isang pinaka solusyon na ma-address pareho, no, consumer tsaka yung mga sasaka, productivity. No? So, kailangan mag-increase talaga yung supply. Ngayon, ang problema mo, para mo ma-increase yung supply, negosyante yan mga magsasaka, negosyante din. So, paano siya magtatanim ng mas madami? Magsasaka, itong fertilizer, itong patubig, itong paano mo siya makukumbinsin na magtanim ng mas madami kung hindi niya alam kung may bibili talaga doon sa mas madami niyang itatanim. Kapag mas madami siyang tinanim, mas marami siyang gastos. So, dapat mas marami siyang maibenta. Ang problema, hindi katulad sa e-commerce, for example. Pagka minsan yung mga nag-e-commerce, hindi naman talaga sila sumusugal pa, iniintay nila may umorder tapos saka nila gagawin, tapos saka nila ibebenta. So sa mga magsasaka, hindi nila alam yun kasi 1 buwan, 2 buwan, 3 buwan mula sa tinanim nila hanggang inani nila, wala namang umorder sa kanila in advance. So importante na ibaba natin yung mga technology, yung AI, yung commerce, transparency, yung marami diyan na wala nga access sa internet. Hindi nga nila alam kung anong presyo ng bilihan sa pandaigdigan, yung presyo ng gulay sa NCR, sa Cebu, sa Davao, kung saan sila nagbebenta. So kung alam nila yon at alam nila ang galawan at yung mga bumibili sa major areas natin sa Manila, sa Cebu, sa Davao, at alam nila, 2 months, 3 months from now, may mga aani sa ganitong areas, magpapareserve na ako. Kapag nagpa-reserve na sila, magsasaka, bibiliin ko yung isang tinulado mo na ganito, pero itanim mo yan sa ganitong quality, bibiliin ko yan, magpirmahan na tayo ngayon. So, sa ibang bansa, maraming ganun. Yung tinatawag nga, di ba, futures. So, bumibili na sila contract growers, yung tinatawag. Diba sa mga corporation, sa mga malalaking kumpanya, kinukontrata na yung mga magsasaka natin para, sa akin na yung 2 hektarya mo, ito lang itatanim mo, ha, pero ganitong quality. Dapat, maraming ganun. So, yung maraming bumibili, 110 million tayong kumakain. Hindi pa ba natin makonsolidate yung mga orders natin araw-araw, buwan-buwan, taon-taon? Di ba alam na dapat natin yun? At yun dapat na programa na sa agriculture. Technology lang ang kailangan mo doon. E-commerce, digitalization, digital government. Yun ang kailangan mong dalahin sa ating mga magsasaka.
Sir, the other important variable, of course, maliban dun sa producer at sa consumer, is the middleman. I mean, ang daming research.
Kasi dahil hindi nagkakakitaan, dahil wala pareho, si magsasaka hindi connected sa internet. So hindi niya nakikita kung magkano ang presyo ng bilihin, magkano dapat ang bibilihin sa kanya, ilan dapat ang bibilihin sa kanya. So ang nangyayari, nagkakaroon ng tinatawag na guessing game, or ang technical term doon, information asymmetry. Ibig sabihin, hindi alam ni farmer kung ano talaga nangyayari doon sa merkado. Tapos si merkado, hindi rin naman alam kung ilan ba talaga ang itatanim ni farmer. So ang tinatawag, may parang chicken and egg problem. Kaya ang nangyayari, dahil imbalance yung mga impormasyon na yon, ang nakikinabang doon ay yung mga middleman. Ngayon, kasalanan ba ng middleman? Hindi. Kasi sumusugal din siya doon sa guessing game. Dahil hindi mo alam kung magkano talaga ang bibilihin niya sa farm. Tapos pupunta siya sa Maynila, ibebenta niya. Hindi naman niya mabebenta din lahat yun. So, si middleman, nagpa-factor in siya doon sa hindi mabibili. Kaso patong-patong na dasal yun . Yung tinatawag ko doon, parang the Hail Mary approach. No? Parang bago ka si farmer, magdarasal muna siya. Ilang kaya tatanong, sana yung itanim ko mabibili. Si middleman, papakyawin niya yung binili, yung harvest ng mga farmer, pero nagdarasal din sana mabili din lahat yun. Bawat dasal, bawat panalangin, bawat pag-asa niya na mabili yun, may dagdag na presyo yun. Kaya ang nangyayari, ang nabiblame natin si middleman. Pero actually, si middleman, talaga naman magpakamatay si middleman. So sumusugal siya doon, maglalabas siya ng pera para bilhin niya sa farmer. Pagdating niya doon sa market, ganito, sana bilihin mo lahat. Marireject din naman yung iba doon. So patong-patong na presyo. Kaya nagta times 3, times 5, times 10 ang presyo ng mga gulay at ng mga prutas dahil lang hindi nagkakakitaan si buyer tsaka si producer. Pag nagkakitaan sila, si middleman, liliit lang din yung kita kasi facilitator na lang si middleman. Magiging digital middleman si and very efficient yun. Di ba pa ba ang presyo natin ng lahat ng bilihin, especially ng prutas at gulay?
Yes, sir. Well, sir, it's not naman talaga fair to expect the middleman to be altruistic .
Yeah. So magpapatong siya doon sa patong-patong. Kung ilang middleman yun, di pagpapatong-patungin mo yung lahat ng dasal nila, di patong-patong na taas ng presyo ng ating prutas at gulay.
Yes, sir. Pero sir, on the other hand, it's been repeatedly pointed out, even by President Duterte, for example, at one point in one of his SONAs, I remember, he was railing against people manipulating the price of rice. I remember that in one SONA, he even ordered all intelligence agencies of all government bodies to go after the rice cartel, the people manipulating the prices of rice, supposedly unscrupulous middlemen. Kasi ang baba ng farm gate, ang taas naman sa palengke. So somebody in the middle, or some people in the middle, were raking in huge profits. So I understand, sir, it's not altruism, but at the same time naman, there also has to be some sort of a cut-off. And I don't know who's supposed to be monitoring that. Is it DTI? Is it DA? Is it the intelligence bodies?
Well, kasi napakarami mo kasing mga regulations papunta doon. So kung tanggalin mo yung lahat ng mga regulations, bayaan mo yung free market mag-take over, no? So mas kaunti yung tutuntunin mo. But at the same time, no, I agree, no, may mga talagang mga abusadong middlemen na talagang dapat ipakulong yan kasi talagang kino-corner niya yan, etc. Kaya nga actually, happy nga ako na nagkaroon ng rice tarification program, no, para bumaba. Ang kailangan lang doon, ipamigay, makabalik yung kinolekta mong taripa para doon sa mga imported rice, dapat maibalik mo uli sa mga magsasaka, no? So pero dapat yun, kaya nangyari yun, 'di ba? Naglagay ng napakalaking competition yun doon sa mga nag-i-smuggle, na nag-hoard ng mga, yung mga middlemen na nag-hoard ng mga rice at kung ano-ano pa mga supply. No, kasi pa may competition. Ako pa rin, no, sa amin pa rin sa economics, no, you cannot outdo, no, you cannot win against free market, no, kasi papaano mo yan, magtataguan lang lagi no. Pero pagka wipe out mo yung regulation, mag-focus ka lang doon sa ilang mga abusado, pero ibaba mo yung regulation para i-foster mo yung competition, but at the same time you make sure, no, na may increase mo yung supply. Nag-increase ng supply, nag-increase ka ng maraming players, maraming competition, mas madaming supply, mas mababa yung presyo. Pero si government, kailangan niya paano niya manggagawin yun? Di dapat naka-digital din siya. Kaya nga ang pinramis ng Pangulo, out of the 19 na legislative agenda, digital government, e-government, di ba? And e-government and e-governance. Dalawa pa nga yun na nabanggit ni Pangulo. Actually, isa lang yun Pero dapat yun, tinutukan yun. Siguro after this second SONA, so dapat yun, malathala agad. Kasi paano mo nga naman nagno-notebook at ballpen ka para i-trace mo yung mga nag-hoard na mga middlemen? Mahirap yun. So pero kung digital ka, na alam mo na from the very start na tinanim yung mga butil ng palay na yon hanggang nabili, nate-trace mo yon, naka-geographic information system yon, parang there's no chance, no? So, mapapagod lang yung mga nagtatago kasi sobrang dami na niyan, sobrang dami ng nagkakakitaan sa internet. Di syempre bababa yung presyo ng bilihin. Yan ang ginawa ng e-commerce sa non-food items. Di bakit hindi natin gawin sa mga food items? May problema ba tayo dun sa mga hoarding na yun? Wala, kasi sobrang dami na nagsusupply. So you cannot, the government can only do so much. The government is just 12 to 15% of the economy. At the end of the day, government must facilitate more supply, more production. Kasi yun lang ang magge-generate ng more income na magge-generate ng more spending. And more spending will go back to more production.
Okay. Maraming salamat, Professor Ronilo Balbieran, who makes economics sound so interesting and exciting. Maraming salamat, sir. Good morning po. And that's today's agenda. Keep it here on Cignal TV's Channel 8 and 250 for the latest news. Sitting in for Cito Beltran, I'm Ed Lingao. We are One News, all sides, all the time.